Thank you so much for joining me today. And I've got a super special human being. Her name's Annie, and she has had not one near-death experience, but two. So she's in the it's she's a very, very special person, and I'm really happy that she's able to share her story, or she's got two stories. So if you wouldn't mind sharing to people, because people are fascinated in what actually happens in a near-death experience, and it's not always contradictory to what people believe. It's not always the same. Tell me what happened in your first one there. Annie.
Well, my first time that it happened, it was before we had kids, and we went to a backcountry in our area. It was a backcountry horseman thing, and it was going on in Moab, Utah. If anybody who's in the United States would know where Moab was, but anyways, it was Moab, Utah. And we went horseback riding, and on the way out, my husband was sick, and I never thought anything of it. You know, he's like, "Oh, everybody's had it, the flu, and it's literally by tomorrow morning I'll be fine." So I didn't think anything of it. We went out there. We had a great time with the big group that we were with horseback riding. And when the night that we were supposed to be coming back, they had this big old huge Dutch oven cooking thing, and we had some really good Dutch oven cooking, and it was a little rich for my system, but I didn't think anything of it. Well, that night I ended up getting sick, and I'm thinking, okay, it's just got to be the cooking. I never really put two and two together that my husband was sick on the way up, and maybe I had what he had. And so I got sick, and my husband was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah." So we get ready to go to bed for the night. I'm laying down there, and I hear, "Get up and go home." And I'm thinking, well, I'm like, what's going on that I need to get up and go home? I don't have any kids, and the animals that I have are here. There's no reason to go home. And so I got up, I got sick again, and came back to bed. I lay in there, and I just start falling asleep, and I hear, "Get up and go home." And I'm getting a little antsy now. I'm like, what's going on? My husband's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I'm being told we just need to get up and go home." And he's all, "Well, you know what? We had our friends bring out the horses. We can go ahead and just go right now." He was very supportive of me. "Let's go ahead and go." And now I was very stubborn. Now I'm not. At the time, I was very stubborn. And I'm like, there is no reason why we need to go home. So I'm laying there, and I'm just about ready to fall asleep. And this time it's yelling, "Get up and go home." And it was so loud that I sat up, and I was literally just like shaking because I was just so nervous because, it's so loud yelling at me. And I sat up, and my husband was like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I'm being told we need to go home again." And I'm like, "But there is no," I was so stubborn. Oh my goodness. I am like, "There is no reason why we need to go home. Everything we got in our horses were fine. We didn't have anything else." And I don't do that anymore. And and so anyways, I was sick throughout the night. The very next morning, we're getting our horses brushed out, getting them ready to go into the trailer to go home. And there was one person in our group that was not the easiest one to get along with, but I was always taught that when you have somebody like that, you have to go out of your way to be a little bit nicer. And a lot of times that will kind of help them to where they're not so angry, or, you know what I mean? Just it calms the situation. So I'm sick. I'm so sick, I cannot keep down water. And I'm brushing out the guy's horse to help him get ready to come back because I'm trying to calm the situation down. So I brush his horse out, and we get going in our car. And I tell my husband, I say, like, if I tell you to pull over, because I'm gonna get sick. And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, no problem." So we get driving, and I go, "Oh, you need to pull over." So he goes ahead and he pulls over off the side of the highway, and I lean forward out the door, and that's the last thing I remember. He says what happened on his side is I literally flipped backwards, like my head on his lap, and all he could see was the whites of my eyes, and I wasn't breathing. And so and at the time, I guess I should have mentioned this, I was hypoglycemic at the time, and I didn't realize that being so sick was going to really, really mess up my blood sugars. And so my husband's kind of freaked out by this. And he's thinking maybe I'm choking because, the way I flip backwards. So he pulls me out and starts trying to do the Heimlich maneuver on me. And and nothing, can't get anything out of me. He lays me down on the ground and he does what he remembers about CPR. See, I guess it's a good thing because now he's a paramedic or EMT. He's done his EMT stuff. So, at least he knows a little bit more now, but he's doing what he remembers about CPR and he's trying to get me breathing. And he says he was going at it for about 5 minutes. He was totally out of his mind. And he finally got me to where I was breathing, but I wasn't conscious. And here comes this guy, he pulls over to the side of the road to try to see what's going on. And my husband, he knows better now. At the time, he's doing like what you see in the movies when you're slapping somebody, trying to get them conscious. So here's this lifeless body on the ground, and the guy freaks out, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, he's killed her!" He jumps back in his vehicle, and he just takes off. Right. Well, what happened was, so I'm gonna tell you what happened. He finally got me to where I was somewhat conscious, but because my blood sugars were so low, I really couldn't talk much. So on my side, what happened was I believe when people die, that often they'll go to the place that gives them comfort, and that's what they see. So some people see the ocean, some people see the meadows. For me, I love the mountains, and so that's where I was at. I was in the mountains. It was green trees. The color was like nothing you can imagine with your visual eyes that you've seen as human. It's just the color was so
So
intense.
vivid.
Yeah, it was. You can't explain it because unless you've seen it, you wouldn't know how to explain it. But
Mm.
I remember that I was on a pathway. There was two pathways, okay, and there were dirt pathways, and I was barefoot, and I was walking on the ground, and I was wearing, I don't know, it was something in white, but I remember seeing my feet, and I'm walking, and there's no weeds whatsoever. Imagine the most beautiful place that you can walk barefoot and never worry about stepping on something that's going to poke your feet. It was just beautiful. And I'm walking on this pathway, and I remember it feeling odd that there wasn't somebody on the other pathway with me. I remember it felt odd. It was kind of strange because I thought that somebody should be with me. And so as we're walking along this pathway, I see a light towards the end of the pathway, and it's in the trees. And as I see this light, I feel this love that's just so strong. But then all of a sudden, I saw orbs of light come out of me, and it was like coming out of my chest. And I'm seeing it. And as everything that I have done at that point so far on this earth that I did without asking for praise or trying to go out of my way and go, look what I did. It was everything I had done, even from childhood on up. It was everything that I had done behind the scenes, not looking for praise, just trying to truly help somebody. And one of the last orbs that came out was brushing out this guy's horse. So it's even the little things that you would think that was nothing, the little things that you do to go out of your way to help somebody else without asking for something in return is what I was seeing. And I just remember feeling all this happiness and this love of all the stuff that I had done. And I remember I'm walking on this path and the light was at the end, as I said. And the closer I got to the light, it was pulling me in. And it was the love was so strong. I guess people would call it Christ-like love. It was just so strong that I didn't want to turn away from it. I wouldn't want to go away from it. I was going towards these trees, and as I was going towards the light, I was becoming one with it. I was no longer just myself. I was so much more than myself. And I was just getting up to the trees, and all of a sudden, I felt like your cerebral cortex, the end of your brain, the back of your brain, it felt like somebody grabbed onto that and just yanked me back into my body. I was not very happy, but I came back into my body. And as I come back into my body, um, I remember that breathing, and I just remember that my whole body, it just hurt. My chest hurt so bad. And I just remember that I was so cold. And to find out that when your blood sugar gets that low, it goes only to those. That's why people go into coma, is because your blood sugar gets so low, it goes to your heart, your lungs, and just that portion of the brain that controls the two. And so
Mm.
I was just freezing because I felt like I didn't have any blood in my hands or anything else, and your heart feels like it's going to explode because there's so much blood going through it, trying to use the little bit of sugar that you got left. And my husband at this time has put me in the car, and he's a big guy, and he was crying, and he was like, just stay with me, please don't leave me, just stay with me. And if it wasn't for that, I knew all I would have to do, honestly, was just relax, and I could have gone back. But I remember just fighting to stay there, because here he is crying, asking me just to stay with him. Um, we went to Green River, which was, I don't remember how many miles away it was, but my husband was doing about 130 miles an hour on the interstate. And it was really fast that he was going. And so he gets me over there, and there is one doctor in this town, this small town. Now it's huge, but there was one doctor in this town, and his house was right next to the clinic. Well, that was great, but it was a Sunday, and he was actually the head of the church there, and he was supposed to be there at the church. It was Sunday, it was the time that he should have been in church. So we pull up, and my husband's honking the horn, hoping that somebody's there, and out comes the doctor. And at the time, I'm thinking that I'm talking with complete sentences, but I guess all that's coming out of my mouth is, I
Mm.
can't talk, because that portion of the brain is not working. And so they go ahead and get me on a gurney, and they take me inside, and they go ahead and give me a shot, a glucose, but they had to go through my leg. They couldn't find any veins. They'd already dropped in my wrist. And so they go through my leg. And then this is the interesting story. This is why I know I'm supposed to be alive. It's the doctor's telling my husband, I'm the head of the church here. And he goes, yes. He goes, I was supposed to be at church. And he says, I went out my vehicle, I started up my vehicle, then realized that I forgot my scriptures inside the house. So I went inside the house, and I guess I had taken my keys when I went inside the house, and then I couldn't find my keys. And it was just one thing after another. And finally he says, I just said, you know what, forget it. There's got to be a reason that I'm supposed to be here today. And he went ahead and stayed. And he says, if not, as low as she was on blood sugar, at very least, she would have been in some type of a coma, blood sugar being so low, or she would have died. So I'm supposed to be here, you
Wow.
know. But I came back knowing it was like information I brought back with me, and it happened, and even the first time that it happened, and that was that this earth is a place to learn from. And the information I brought back is, as long as you're not doing anything to try to hurt someone else, everything else is just a lesson. And so I was being told that when you go and hurt somebody else, you're pulling them off their life path. And so everybody has their own path. And as long as you're not doing something to hurt someone else, you're fine.
Mm.
Kind of interesting, simple. I guess that's as simple as love one another, right?
That's right. And there's a difference between hurting somebody and hurting somebody intentionally.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
That's,
And that's what it is. As long as you're not trying to hurt somebody, you know,
yeah.
you can't go and tiptoe around everybody's emotions. But if your intention is not to hurt them, and they get hurt anyway, then that's kind of on them and what they're doing.
Mm.
But if you go, I don't like this person, and you start rumors, obviously you're doing something intentionally to hurt them. So you're correct on that. Thank you for correcting me. But
Oh, it's not. I'm not correcting you.
no,
I'm
you're
just telling listeners. That's all.
no. I
Mm.
meant to say it that way, and not intentionally going out and hurting somebody.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow, how fascinating. Your poor husband must have been freaking out.
he was totally freaking out. And I'm still married to him now, so that's impressive. No, I'm just kidding. My biggest joke is, and I haven't killed him yet. I've been married for 33 years, so it's been a
Mm.
long time.
He's not going anywhere.
Not yet. No, I'm just kidding.
So tell me a little bit about your second one then.
The second one was totally different. I went in for surgery because I was in a car accident, And when I was in a car accident, it was my last surgery that I was supposed to have. I've got a titanium plate in my neck. That's another long story, but there's a reason that things have been trying to take me out, but I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we're in a car accident. My husband was driving. It wasn't our fault. There was a full-size van, and we see the light going green, and the full-size van is next to us. And so we're going with the green light, and I guess this full-size van motioned for the person in the parking lot to pull out, but we can't see them because that van's there. And this college student pulled out in front and couldn't stop. Boom, hit her. But it was her fault for pulling out blindly like that. But and we weren't going very fast, and the hospital was literally right across the street from where the accident took place. And I didn't know how bad I was hurt at the time, and my knees came forward and hit the dashboard, and I thought my knees were hurt. I didn't know there was something wrong with my neck. And so the paramedics showed up, and they're like, well, do you think you can just go ahead and walk to the hospital? One of them said that. I think that one was very new to it. And the next paramedic comes up and he goes, well, how does your neck feel? And I turned it and I said, just feels really stiff. And he's like, don't move. Anyways, they went ahead and boarded me up to just literally take me over to the hospital, and to find out that I had fractured, it would be 7. They said a quarter inch more, I would have been paralyzed from the neck down. And and then I herniated. We found out later I had herniated 5 and 6, between 5 and 6. That's why I've got a titanium plate in my neck. But from the jarring sensation, it actually made it to where the first rib on both sides, the muscle, every time I'd raise my arm, the muscle with the rib would literally cut off the blood supply with the artery that goes through there. So they had to actually go in and remove the first rib on both sides of me. And it was the second surgery. And when I went in to have it, we had everything scheduled. And you know how you have that something's going to happen and you don't know what it is feeling, but you can't just call up and cancel it because you don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I had that feeling. But what am I supposed to say? I have a bad feeling about having surgery on that day. Maybe we should just go ahead and change it. You know what I mean? But I had that feeling before I went into this. And so I had the surgery done and everything went well in the surgery. What happened was the recovery room was a problem. It was an extremely busy recovery room, and they didn't have enough nursing staff as they monitor you as you start to come out. And so what happened was one of the nurses gave me morphine but didn't chart it. And so then the next comes by, and I guess I was complaining. I don't know. You're still kind of doped up out of it. I don't remember that. And I guess the nurse came by and didn't chart it twice. And then finally, the third nurse comes by because I guess they're in rotation. I guess there was a shift change during that time. And the next nurse comes in and goes, oh, this person needs it. They haven't gotten anything. Gives me a morphine shot, and it just stopped my heart. Just stopped my heart. I remember.
Morphine overdose.
I remember. Yeah, they overdosed me. And so what happened was I'm laying there, and I remember hearing the nurses and doctors, and they're like, Annie, stay with us. Stay with us, Annie, stay with us. And I remember the feeling of coming out of my body, and I remember the ceiling lights and hearing the voices. I didn't know them, and I didn't care. To me, it was like all of a sudden feeling freer than you've ever felt in your Oh, and I do have to tell you something on the first story that I realized too. But anyways, it was like freer than I've ever felt in my life. And I just floated up through the ceiling, and I just allowed my spirit to be pulled where I was supposed to go. And as it's being pulled, I went through this ground that wasn't a ground. Now I need to stop and tell you a little bit more of the story that I told John earlier. And that was when I was a little kid, I've always seen spirits, but I've always heard like talking. And I could pick out little words like it's and the, but I couldn't understand. I knew that they were talking about somebody, but I didn't know what they were saying because the speech it was very, very quick. Well, on this time when I died, I went through this cloud that wasn't a cloud, and I'm slowly coming up, and I'm seeing people standing in their robes, and I knew that they were guides, And I'm hearing that same talking that I used to freak out with because I didn't know what it was when I was a kid. And I realized that as they're talking back and forth, the reason I couldn't understand it is because they're talking at the speed of thought, not the speed that comes out of your mouth. And so it was extremely quick. And there was a man in the group, and he looked really old. And he looks at me and he looks down because I'm like barely just coming through this cloud that's not a cloud, and my head's kind of sticking up. I'm slowly coming up. He looks at me and telepathically he goes, "Not yet." And then like puts his hand towards my head, and there I go, that same grabbing onto the cerebral cortex being yanked back into my body. And when I came to I had been intubated, so I had a tube down my throat. I'm freaking out, even though they're like, calm down, you can breathe. Trust me, when there's a tube down your throat, you don't feel like you can breathe, even though you can. And so I'm freaking out, trying to grab at it, and they're like holding me down and having everybody hold me down and to give me a shot to calm me down because I'm freaking out because there's a tube down my throat. But the one thing that I mentioned to you, and it's very important, the first time I had this experience, and this is probably one of the most important things I can tell anybody who's listening. When you're in the process of dying, you feel like you're waking up. This is just a dream. That's real. This is a dream. And that's really important to understand, especially when you're here on this earth and you're going through such troubled times and you're having to learn this and that and you're doing all these different things. This is only temporary. Yes, sometimes it sucks, but you have to look at it in a different perspective of picking out the best things about it. Through all my experiences that I've learned is to look for the beauty in things. Don't look for the negative. Look for the positive things in everything that happens to you, because that's the most important thing. Is to look for the positive. Even I'm late to work. I'm so frustrated and instead of that, you have to go, okay, well maybe I was supposed to be late because something might have happened on the way. There's a positive outlook on it. Turn everything around to be positive. Don't look at the negative. The negative is going to come and go, but the positive will stay as long as that's what you hold on
to. Just let it go. You're late. Okay.
Gotta let it go. Exactly. So those are my two experiences. I don't know if you have any questions on that, but
fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So do you feel like going through those two experiences has changed your life much?
Yes, it did. It's changed my perspective on things. I've had a lot of other experiences that I've talked to you about that it's changed it even to a greater extent. But it made it to where after the first time, you don't fear death. I don't. I have no in the fact that I know what's on the other side. I remember that feeling of being a part of something greater than being one. Anybody who meditates and gets to that state of meditation where you connect to everything would understand that feeling, because you're no longer just you're a part of something so much greater. So if anything, that's what I've learned. I know that we're all connected. I've been shown that we're all connected. And so I think if I give any advice to anybody is, you see somebody who needs help picking up groceries, opening up the door for them, little things like that go such a long way. If all of us did just even a little to help each other, this world would be just a beautiful place. So,
be a lot more beautiful.
More beautiful. Exactly. So I guess not very long experiences, but they're my experiences. But it's just
absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely fascinating. You do you feel blessed to go through those experiences, even though they're obviously pretty not so nice experiences?
Well, I've had a lot of not so nice experiences, but I feel blessed because, everything that happens here is nothing more than growing experience. And because I've had these experiences, I've been able to talk to different people that are basically on their edge of life, that they're getting ready to leave. And a lot of times I'm able to relax them to where they don't have that fear of death, because there is really nothing to fear about it. Now, I'm not saying go jump in front of a train. We all have our life path we need to live out. But when that time comes that we need to go, why would you be afraid of something that is so beautiful that when you come back, each time I was not very happy?
Yeah.
And even though, I love my husband and everything, I had a little bit of anger that I had to come back, of like, why did I have to leave that? Because the feeling is so strong and the love is so strong, you don't want to leave it.
Mm.
You don't want to leave it. Once you're there, it's like, it would be like being in the most beautiful place and then like, okay, I don't want to call earth hell or anything like that, but I'm just saying the difference. The difference is just so strong, knowing that you're coming back into this. So anybody who's on that, getting ready to leave this place, and that's your life path, that it's going to happen, because we don't have choices. In the fact of when we're going to go, we already know. It was decided before we came here when we're supposed to go. So why fear that? It's just part of the experience. And the
Yeah.
experience is waking up. That's the one thing to remember. You're waking up. And you're going to look back at this and go, wow, that was a long dream.
Mm.
People say we live in the matrix, but in a lot of ways, yes, we do. So, but everything here is a learning experience. And I really feel, for me, it's a learning experience, but I want to be able to talk with other people, share my experiences. And it takes away a lot of their fear, because I don't have fear. I don't have fear at
Yeah.
all. So it takes
That's
away
the
the
number
fear.
one fear, and that's the number one fear in a human being. That's is fear of dying.
Mhm.
Mm.
It's just
There's
waking
nothing to
up.
be scared of.
There's nothing to be afraid of at all. So
So, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time, and I've got a feeling that I might be interviewing you again with some of your other stories, because they sound
all right.
absolutely fascinating.
All right,
Absolutely
John.
fascinating. So thank you so much.
Thank you for interviewing me. I like to be able to put the word out there, and nobody has anything to fear. Thank you, John.